Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. That's kind of how it is around here. Craziness as always. And what can I say? Tonight, guys, I am Chris Knight. This is the Gospel According to Chris on the Real Review 3000. And we have a great guest on. I see a lot of you guys in the chat already, so it's great to see you guys. But we have Tom of Midnight's Edge After Dark and also Midnight's Edge. You guys know him. You've seen him a lot. He talks about a lot of stuff. I think he's like me. I think he likes to hear his own voice. But let's bring him up right now and have him talk for himself. How are you doing, Tom?
Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, indeed.
You sound like you're coming at me from a radio from the 1970s, but hello.
Oh, really? I don't know. I can't even hear myself. Let me see.
Yeah, there's a bit of fuzz behind it.
Yeah, well, the problem is that I have an open expanse area here, and because I just found out that my landlord might be selling the place, I'm not going to finish off what I was going to do until I know if I'm staying or not. So I have all the soundproofing and everything, and I got to cover up pipes and all that fun stuff. So,
well, it sounds more electronical. Like they're saying in the chat, you're really low too, and you are a little low.
Okay, well, we can add that up right there. Is that better?
Not much of a difference on my end, but maybe on theirs.
Anyway, anyone?
A little better. Works for me anyway.
Well, I just don't want to. I'm watching my peak over here, so that's kind of part of it. But wrong mic? No, not wrong mic. I don't think. Hold on, let's check this.
So yeah, double checked.
Because what's weird is, no, I believe it's okay. Let me see here. Let's try that. Any better?
No change.
Okay, yeah. Oh, we won't worry about it right now. If I need to turn it up, I can turn it up. Yeah, I know you're here to hear Tom, not me. So we'll let that be what it is. Okay, first off, I'm sure everybody knows I'm pretty sure everybody here knows who Tom is. That's a lot harder to say than I would have thought. But why don't you just tell everybody about yourself and where you can be found really quick, Tom, please.
Well, I'm part of Midnight's Edge. As far as myself, I grew up in the 80s. I went to school for radio and television production. Bit of a classically trained actor in the sorts of ways, I guess you could call it. Got into home video, had my own video store for a while, worked for a lot of video stores, and got to know a few people in the industry that way. And other than that, just been mainly working with Midnight's Edge for the better part of 5 years now. So it's been a great ride.
Awesome. All right. So where Tom isn't is a shorter list. Oh, yes, that's true. No, absolutely. Okay, and then Jack Swallow says I sound fine. So what does it matter?
It must be equal.
We're going to make it.
So
we are going to make it through this. All right, so guys, this is how this works. I just asked a bunch of questions that I would like Tom to tell you guys about. Now, you guys might have heard this before. You might have heard him talk for hours and hours and hours and hours about himself, because if it were me, I'd be doing that, but we're not doing that today, because this is about Tom. So let's just start with a basic question. Where did your appreciation for film, TV, music, that type of thing, where did that come from? Where do you think the impetus of it started? We're looking at little Tom. At what age did he go like, ooh, interesting?
Wow. Probably very early on. Like my first real memory of, something that was movie or television related that really got my attention was Superman. And I was pretty young when that happened to be, I think like ABC, Superman 2 was on one night. My mom sat me down in front of it and I just watched it and it was Superman. It was like my toy come to life, Same thing with He-Man and the toy, seeing cartoon real young. That's probably my second or so memory. I mean, I don't know about the actual order, but I'm, very, very fuzzy memories. But just those kind of things really kind of clicked with me. Things scared me like King Kong and Gremlins, but that actually intrigued me to find out more about movies. So that kind of led me down the path. found some like-minded friends, and then just one thing led to another. Instead of getting into sports and cars, I got into movies and women. So, that's how it
Well, yeah.
worked.
Now, I
A
mean,
little
like for
music in
me,
there when I was a teenager, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can look at things and I can say, okay, I remember watching Masterpiece Theater or Sherlock Holmes or Doctor Who with my mother. She was like the PBS person in my house. My dad watched movies, like action movies. That's where, Star Wars. Well, I mean, he took me to see Star Wars. They both did when I was just a little baby. But do you think your appreciation for film, that type of thing, do you think that came from your parents, or do you think that it came from yourself and your own want to find out more about it?
It kind of started from my parents. I mean, my dad was one who was always full of just random trivia, like, and it just sometimes overlapped with movies and televisions, more so television. Like my dad was like, he always has like random trivia when it comes to television, just off the wall stuff. And sometimes not so much off the wall, but like a story that goes along with that. Like when I met Clint Howard, the reason I knew who he was at first when I was younger was because my dad's like, that's Clint Howard. That's Opie's brother on Andy Griffith. And, he kind of explained to me how the whole dichotomy worked. And I believe the episode that he actually explained this to me on was when, Clint was there as the little kid in the eating a peanut butter jelly sandwich or whatever in the scene. And Clint actually happened to have that photo for him to sign when I met him. And I'm like, I got to have this, and I got to have you sign it to my dad, because it's because of him I know who you are. And it's kind of where I got down this path of, just who, because before that, when I was younger, like even, the first time seeing Superman, that was Superman to me. I didn't know it was a movie. I didn't understand what a movie was, like to me, it was just me watching what Superman was doing. To me, I thought TV and movies were just, just getting to watch what people were doing. I didn't really kind of grasp it or come till I was about 4 or 5 years old. Then it really kind of clicked with me. And that's kind of when Gremlins and all that kind of stuff came along. And I really kind of, about that point is where I really kind of understood there's reality and then there's movies, like 3, 4 years old, somewhere in there.
Okay. Yeah.
So then that kind of, like I said, sent me down the path. My mom, on the other hand, she just consumes movies like crazy. So like just about any kind. So that's where my wide berth of taste comes from, as far as like just about anything you could watch. The only thing she was never really into, my dad was never really into, was horror. And that's where, when I met like-minded friends, like they started opening up more avenues for me, like horror and independent and things of that sort. So like then that really grew and grew and grew. But as far as like the mainstream movies and television, that was definitely my folks nurturing that. And then of course I had a lot of cousins and friends, like I said, that also were into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it always starts with the parents, but then like you said, okay, my parents don't watch this, but I want to watch this. So you watch it, and then you hear about it at school, or you hear about it, a friend says something about it, and I'm sorry, that's why I need to fix things here.
There we go. Big difference.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well,
whatever
anyways.
That was, it fixed it.
Okay, well, but so parents start that path of, ooh, look, I like this is cool. And then you, as a person, the older you get, you seek out those things that you didn't get from your parents or something,
Exactly.
For me, music was the big thing. Music, I got that like influx of country and the older stuff, like old country, rockabilly stuff.
Yeah,
from my dad.
Music I got
my
more
mom,
from my dad.
Yeah, but my mom listened to Johnny Mathis and things like, Neil Diamond and, Beatles, stuff like that. My dad had all the Beatles records, original. My mom had all the Beatles records, original, except for my mom. She couldn't listen to them because they were still, they'd been played 5 billion times, so, I mean, but that's where I think it all starts from, is this whole, let's, you're around your parents. That's where it starts. But then,
well, not only
sit
that,
there.
Like I said, my dad got me into the music too, and the music at the time was also big. We were in this renaissance in the 80s when it came to movies, especially. Like, so like that was one thing too. Like we had the introduction of home video. That was something new. That really kind of, and I was always enthralled with things like that. Like electronics really enthralled me. So that was kind of partially probably my push to get into it, was just the whole idea of I can watch whatever I want, whenever I want to.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've talked off streams and stuff before. I think you and I have a lot of similar things that got us into this. That electronics thing, man. If I could pick up, I had an 8-track and it was broken, and I figured out how to fix it so I could play 8-tracks again. I figured out belt drive record players, things like that, and I was big into that whole, electronic things. But that's the 80s. I mean, that was the 80s, because so many things changed from, the 70s to the late 80s. I mean, we went into, we started getting DVDs, and you had, we got the MP3s, and I mean, everything. I think you and I, our age, our generation, has probably seen the most swing of what was there to offer us. And now, we saw everything change, literally right in front of our eyes. So,
no, you're not wrong. Yeah, we were the last generation to kind of grow up without a personal computer in the home. We were the first generation with home video. We're definitely the home video generation. I mean,
oh yeah,
that's kind of the way it works. I mean, that's one thing that really it defined our generation was the VCR was the new thing. Like it changed everything.
Absolutely. No, I mean, Blockbuster was, maybe half a mile from my house. I walked there,
because before VCR, to see a movie, it was either got lucky enough to go to the theater or, you had to wait for it to come on television. And then you run the risk of it being edited anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. that used to be on UHF. I mean, most of our stuff was thrown over on UHF. So, especially the good ones, like the really quirky sci-fi horror stuff was always put over to the secondary UHF. So interesting. How did you start in YouTube? How did you get your start in YouTube? Because, okay, you've been with Midnight's Edge for 5 years, but were you doing this before that?
Yeah, I actually tried starting a couple other channels, just doing music, some video projects, and then that led to me doing a review channel of sorts, and that's kind of directly led to me being on Midnight's Edge. So it was all kind of just a lot of years of nothing, and then all of a sudden, boom. And that's kind of why I've always tried to be as, paying it forward as much as I could, in the last few years to try and help out as many people as I could the way I have. But yeah, no, that's really how it happened. It was just kind of a whirlwind of holy crap. My life just kind of changed. And I had a lot of personal stuff in my life change just prior to that as well. So, in a matter of a couple of years, change of direction in my employment, I ended up getting, because videos went away. So I didn't really, I have that for anymore to get into. And then I got custody of my son who happened to be autistic. So that really, I became a full-time dad, on top of trying to juggle work and that. And then when I started doing this, I was also working another job at the same time. So until my kid was out of school, it was working that job, take care of my kid plus Midnight's Edge. And then now finally that he's out of school and, outside of just causing me the typical young adult issues that he does at the age of about 20 now he is, that's more stuff I have to worry about outside of Midnight's Edge, which I kind of, basically concentrate all my time on and effort.
Yeah, I understand that. I've got 2 kids and they're here with me 24/7. Now I have a child with ADHD, which is not the same as, autism. So I don't quite understand that. I'm sure it's
similar. There's similar characteristics depending, but yeah.
Yeah, but I know the amount of, I got to run, do this, and it's always jumping around and everything like that. So if you weren't able to be on YouTube, let's say YouTube's taken off the table and you weren't there, what is it that you would want to be doing? Like, if you could just have your dream job, it was there for you to take, and YouTube wasn't there.
Oh, I always wanted to be a director. That was my initial, and that kind of came about. Like, I always thought I wanted to be an actor or a musician. And when I went to one acting camp one year, I got into it with the director, and he's like, "Tom, someday you're going to make a great director, but right now you're being a shitty actor, and you need to listen to me because I am the director. You're not." And at that moment, I kind of clicked with me that maybe that's what I should be doing instead. And you know, from there, I really wanted to, but then I got that moment of like, ah, crap, you know, the odds of that happening are so slim that I got to have some kind of backup. So that's when I got into television and radio production, because I figured if anything, I could be a DJ. But then, of course, I picked the wrong time to do that. So I mean, if worse came to worse, I could probably still do that if I could find a radio station that actually still has real live DJs. But and I know you know how that works.
Well, you know, I talk to people still from here. I did some interning and stuff like that with the guy actually that he's not nationally syndicated, I think, because he doesn't want to be. But he's done the voice work for Full Throttle Saloon, Johnny Dare. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Anyway,
no, but yeah.
Okay, I mean, I basically interned underneath him, and one day he pulls me aside and says, "You do not want this lifestyle." He says, "You don't want this." He says, "I'll teach you every damn thing you want to know about this." He says, "If you do anything in music, if you want to DJ or something," he says, "go out there, find a bar, do it there. Just do what you want to do." Because he says,
I did that for many years.
and you see, I own a business that does that. But I have gotten to the point where I've moved on, and I kind of just book things and throw them out to other people. We've talked about M.E.A.D radio and all that. Really quick, Ensign Ricky, $5 super chat. Insert reason for super chat here. Random reason, because you decided to give me money. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No, I did the bar scene for years. I had my own gig, and then actually was on air for a short time. I was just young, dumb, and stupid, and screwed that up. But then after that, I went and got my own business and some other things going, and it just went from there. But no, honestly, I'd love to do voice work if I had the opportunity. If not, directing, some writing, maybe. That kind of stuff.
I mean, every time we've talked, I hear a lot of the same things. I'm like, oh, I'd love to do that. I'd love to, be, doing voice work. I have a voice work thing that I put out there that I put on a website, and every once in a while somebody calls me up and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. It's fun stuff. I don't know. It's one thing when you do what you love to do, and that's what pays your bills. Unfortunately for me, that's not fully what pays my bills, but then again, that's another story for another day. Okay, so let's do this. What is it that you try to do for the people who watch your videos? What is it you're trying to offer them when they come to watch Midnight's Edge or M.E.A.D or anything that you're on, and you're sitting there, you're looking at it, you're like, what do I want the people who are watching this show, this video, what do I want them to get from this? What is that?
Well, mainly information. Like, that's kind of our first goal. Like, obviously we're trying to provide a service for those who want some entertainment news without the spin of the corporate media, and we do our best to do that. We try to sift through all the BS. Over time, that has given us opportunities to get to know some people on the inside, and sometimes that helps us reevaluate things or evaluate things differently than some of the other people out there. But yeah, no, we like to think that we provide things from, even though we don't try to get into regular politics, when it comes to corporate politics, on the other hand, that's kind of our domain. That's our specialty. When it comes to rights, usually that's another thing we kind of get into quite a bit. Andre's background's in financing, so that's where a lot of his expertise comes in. My background, of course, is more in promotion and ancillary things. So like I kind of know just like a randomness of everything, but like I'm really good at I have my things with when it comes to investigation and journalism, and as far as like doing research and all that kind of stuff, and digging up information here and there about things. And I wish I was better at certain things, of course, but no, like but what we want to provide is a news, commentary, and entertainment, most of all. And I hope we do, as far as that goes, but quality as well on top of that. That's one thing we pride ourselves on. There's been plenty of times where Andre will even, it'll get the better of him, and he's just like, I don't care, just rush it out. It's like, no, we have a standard of quality, and we have to adhere to it. Otherwise, we're not Midnight's Edge, and then he concedes, obviously, but sometimes it's just the way it works.
Okay. Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
mean,
no, we just want to be inspiring. If we can get anybody to listen in Hollywood to change, or anybody who's on the in the up and coming in the business to hear us and hear what fans want and need, then yeah, maybe that's all we can hope for.
yeah. Larry, $1.99 super chat. That's a thumbs up. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. What's funny is sometimes I got people that, I contact every once in a while when I'm trying to find out information. I don't always stick with movies and stuff. I'm so ADHD about everything that I'm not as focused as you guys are. But one thing I do know is when I hear information or when I think I have information, I do try to check out your guys' videos and say, okay, what are they saying? Because honest to God, most of the time when things have played out, you guys are, I'm going to give you at least 90% of the time it seems to be correct information. So, I appreciate that about what you guys do. It's great stuff. So, all right. Let's see here. Who is the biggest guest that you've had on your shows or that you've met face to face? And were you a fanboy when that happened?
Oh boy. Well, one of my bigger fanboy moments was actually not on our channel.
Okay.
It was on. We were doing a thing for the In Search of guys. They did In Search of Tomorrow, In Search of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
We were one of the executive producers or whatever the thing. They're helping them out on the one deal on the earlier stuff,
Cool.
and they brought us in for a Dune watch party, and they actually had Brad Dourif come in, and that was sweet. Like, to me, to talk to Chucky was cool shit, because he's he's Chucky. I mean, come on. And he's Brad Dourif. I mean, he's Brad Dourif. I mean, yeah. So like that was like probably the closest I ever came to fanboying. That was pretty cool. Talking to like Lou Diamond Phillips really kind of, because like growing up, La Bamba was like one of the first soundtracks I ever had. If not, I think it was the first soundtrack I had. It was definitely the first cassette I ever had. So like that movie growing up was a big one for me. So when we had Lou Diamond come in with a bunch of those guys for that reunion, that was crazy. So that was a little fanboyish for me. But probably the one I'm most proud of was Robert Shea, because not a lot of people have talked to him. And for those who don't know who he is the guy who built New Line Cinema. Like he's responsible for Nightmare on Elm Street, the Ninja Turtles movie, Mortal Kombat 95, all the way up through The Mask and Lord of the Rings. So like that's the guy. He has single-handedly probably had more to do with Hollywood than a lot of people when it comes to like doing it yourself. New Line Cinema built themselves from the ground up, and they were extremely huge, to the point where they like I said, they made the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then of course Warner kind of swallowed them up, but that is what it is. But talking to him was just intense, because this guy was, I mean, he's a pioneer. I mean, he's
I can only imagine the wealth of knowledge that man has.
Oh God, yeah. Well, we got lucky, and he actually even talked to us in 2 settings. We edited the conversation together in one, but that was the thing, is we felt like we just didn't get enough out of the first one, and we felt rushed, and so we got a little bit more out of him. But yeah, it was just a great conversation, and if we could pick his brain apart even more, I'd love to do a documentary about the guy.
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, that's kind of one of those pie in the sky one of these days kind of things.
Yeah, but the fact that you've talked to him makes that a possibility. I mean, there's a possibility.
He's an elusive guy, yeah, and that's kind of where a few of my connections helped, and he was gracious, and him and Andre were speaking Norwegian quite a bit. He's multilingual, so he loves to talk.
Wow.
When he can in outside of English. So it was fun to hear those guys converse and have no friggin' clue what they're saying outside of a few words. But no, that was probably the one that I was most proud of in the end. But Nicholas Myers was crazy. I mean, they're also, as far as like meeting him face to face in person, though, nothing beats Clint Howard. I partied with that man in Vegas for hours, so that was crazy.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't like crazy party, but it was that cool kind of like, you want to get something to eat? Sure, I got to eat sometime. And we fed him, and then he's like, you want to go get high? And he's like, hell yeah, I got a card. So we went and hung out and got stoned in Vegas with Clint Howard. So it was crazy. And he told us all kinds of stories about Solo and growing up
Mhm.
in the industry and stuff. It was something you could never I could never trade in my life for anything. You know what I mean? Like just one of those once in a lifetime experiences for sure.
Awesome. Okay, let's see here. I mean, I got a list of things here. I'm deciding to ask you. The last, I'll save one of these to the last because it has nothing to do with anything really. It's just to poke your brain for it. What do you think your biggest accomplishment has been so far?
Well, outside of the Robert Shea interview,
Sure.
um, I mean, I guess just in general, what Andre and I have done with Midnight's Edge. I mean, because when I came on board, I mean, we to me it was huge that we had 30,000 subscribers on that channel. You know, I'm part of this 30,000 subscriber channel. It's like wow,
Mhm.
you know. And then now here we're looking back, and we've gotten this far. You know, 200 some plus thousand subscribers. It's crazy. We do a morning show 3 days a week where, you know, we entertain upwards of 1,000 people or more live, let alone the people who watch it afterwards. So it's just
Mhm.
crazy to think about. You know, I stop and think about way back when I was on radio broadcasting. It's like, God, more people are probably listening to me now than were actually listening to me then,
Oh
which is
yeah.
insane. You know, it just boggles my brain, you know, and just to see all the people in the chat right now, just, you know, I just sometimes I just sit there and try to picture that many people in a room. And you guys have
Mhm.
no idea. I wish I could express to you the feeling it makes you feel when you think that way. It just and they're all there to hear you and your buddies talk about these things. It's really like you can't like you know, you asked me earlier what I would love to do if it wasn't for that. Like honestly, this is so much better job than that. I'd love to create a movie. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to be
Mhm.
a director, but when it comes to the ability to be so in touch with an audience, you don't get that when you're a director. You don't get that when you're an actor.
No.
This is something that it's, you know, it's the closest I'll ever be to a rock star, but at the same time, it's the most humbling experience you'll ever have, especially when you're sitting there and you're looking at the ticker at the top of the screen, and you know it says 1,000 people are watching you or more, and you're just like, wow. If you imagine that many people in one room, that's insane.
No, it is. Um, yeah, I mean, to me, whenever I'm doing a show or whenever, you know, I'm on, whenever I've been on your show or somebody else's show, the things we talk about, it's like sitting around, and I don't know what you guys have, but there's diners and all this other stuff. It's like sitting around a diner, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and just talking. But yet people are watching and listening to you. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, how in the world how did that happen?
Well, it originally started more so Andre wanted like this lounge kind of atmosphere, kind of like
But yeah,
a Norwegian, you know, bar in the woods kind of place. You know, sorry, my dog's
yeah.
going crazy.
No, it's fine. Quick question here.
But yeah,
Vasco scenario says, Tom, how did Midnight's Edge in Spanish happen?
good
How did
question.
it happen?
Um, it was kind of one of those weird things. Like we've been looking to expand in some other channels, even though Andre and I are stretched so thin already.
Mhm.
But he and I both noticed that the Latino or Mexican community and Hispanic community, all these different communities are being underserved. Him being multilingual, of course, thought of this. I noticed it just demographically, they're the second largest group as far as who watch TV and movies and stuff like that. So we just, you know, I especially noticed, you know, with He-Man, like how big He-Man was in
Mhm.
like Mexico and stuff like that. So, like, there's just certain things like that clicked with me, and then I just happened to meet the right people at the right time, like Paulie and all that kind of stuff, and
Mhm.
of Latino Slant, and it just kind of clicked. I'm like, this is the guy that we need a version of the channel, but it's, you know, towards the Espanol crowd, and
Mhm.
a lot of our videos in Espanol, but not just that, like an entire kind of like thing that's catering to that crowd, because they're a group of a demographic of people that just are underserved. They're very underserved when it comes to entertainment. And Paulie got that right away. And I ran to it with Andre, and Andre's like, you know what? I've been thinking of the same kind of thing. And I said, better yet, I got the guy for it, you know.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of sprung from there. And you know, we had another guy who reached out to Andre before that, who had talked to us a little bit about translating the videos already about starting a channel. So it kind of all just came together at once. It was one of those
Mhm.
just kind of whirlwind of events that he had kind of this going on the other side, and I'd been kind of talking to Paulie and kind of cooking up the idea in my head on the other side, and we just kind of melded the two ideas like Reese's peanut butter cups, and it just became Midnight's Edge Espanol.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, and Diego and Pablo and Paulie, those guys do great jobs over there. And, I think they recently brought in like a guy named Mickey Rooney and some other stuff there. They do great stuff over there. So check them out if you guys haven't. Even if you can't speak Spanish, they do their best to try and be bilingual throughout. There's a lot of people who have written to us and said, it's helped me learn Spanish, or I've
Well,
had
yeah.
to learn for a job, or whatever. And, this helps because it's just regular conversation.
Yeah, no, that's typically how you learn. The easiest is to listen to it, and then as you go along, you start picking out the words and you start understanding, like, okay, this, and this. I mean, I'd love to speak more than one language, but I speak one language and very, very little of a lot of different languages. So, all right. Last serious question, then we'll get to the one I want to poke your brain on, which absolutely has nothing to do with anything really major. But here's one for you. Is there any advice you'd give to people in your field? When I say your field, I'm not just talking about YouTube. I'm talking about film, production, music, anything like that. Is there any advice you give to your people in your field, or any words of warning?
Well, anymore, the problem with YouTube is it is such a monster to overcome compared to when I first got started. Like, even before I was part of Midnight's Edge, I had gotten myself to the point where I was monetized, and I wasn't making a ton,
Mm-hmm.
but I was doing all right for the smallest channels I was. And when I had first gotten that first boost, when we had first started going, I was technically kind of making more now than I am, or making more then than I am now on After Dark side of things, because of just how things have changed on YouTube. So if you're trying to get into this for a career, don't expect that to happen, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because the chances are slim. And even if you're successful enough to get 15-20,000 subscribers, it's not going to be enough to make a living off of, probably, unless and you'll kill yourself trying to. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing, is I'd hate to see anybody go through that. But outside of that, I mean, if you think that you have something to offer YouTube that nobody else is doing, or very few people are doing, like, that's my big thing. Like, I know most people want to get into this kind of a field, like into entertainment talk and stuff like that, but especially in the last couple of years, with the things being shut down, that this has become a very saturated market. You even have people in the media and movie stars and all that kind of stuff starting their own YouTube channels. So
Mm-hmm.
it's become quite of a challenge to get into the entertainment side of things. But if, hey, like, I've talked to people where they're like, I like talking about this, but I don't really have anything else. It's like, well, just talk about that. And it's like, what else do you do? Well, I'm into Legos. Well, like, build some Legos while you're doing that. Like, do
I
something
don't.
unique. I never know. Somebody might pick up on it. It might be the next biggest thing. But other than that, just be persistent. Just kind of try and find your voice. Try and not go against the grain, but, like, in a sense of, like, don't go out there and spout nonsense, but, like, don't try to do what everybody else is doing, is what I'm trying to say. Like, try to
Yeah.
do your own thing in your own way, with your own way of doing it, because otherwise you're just going to get buried with all the other stuff. And I've seen a lot of people who also kind of, well, I don't understand why this person gets so many viewers and I don't. Well, it's like, it has nothing to do with anything personal. Sometimes it's just the way the algorithm works. And if you're talking about
Yeah.
something that 500 people are talking about, then that's going to be a lot of spread, uh, eyeballs. So you got to kind of find your
Yeah.
own niche, and that's kind of the thing. I mean, I encourage that aspect of it. Outside of that, just like I say, just try not to take it so seriously. Try not to get so emotionally involved, because it can be very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wish I had better advice than that. I don't know what else to really
Uh,
say, other than like, just keep trying, keep pushing, do your best to engage with your crowd. That's important.
yeah.
Um, I, I I really don't know what else to say other than that. I mean, just try to have fun. That's the main thing. As long as you're having fun, turn it into a hobby. Because, as
Yeah.
the old saying goes, if you love your job, you don't work a day in your life. Well, you may not make $1 million off of doing it, but it might be something you might make enough to support a hobby, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
best that you can hope for. And if you just happen to do something that nobody else is doing and get trending or get a big channel out of it, hey, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
You never know.
I've put it to a lot of smaller channels, and of course your channel is bigger than mine, and we're not going to go there. That makes no difference to me. But I've always talked to smaller channels. They're like, oh, but I'm only getting this many views. So I said, listen, if you have one person listening to you for what you're saying, that's something. I said, I always believe that people overthink this whole thing, that there's like some secret formula. And I think you said it absolutely right. It is more, and I don't like using the word, but it's more of luck of the draw. If you hit something and it becomes that thing, and you were one of the first, and people find you for that, that's where this happens. But you're absolutely right. Over the past 2 years, this has become a saturated market. There's a lot of things out there. And like you said, 500 people talking about one thing. It drives me nuts sometimes as I hear some people talk about the same thing over and over for over a year. And it's like, well, let's move on. There's something different to talk about now.
Yeah, I mean, we try not to dwell on things too much over at Midnight's Edge too. I mean, we deliberately try not to engage in the, consistent, throwing out of videos just because, it's a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
We
Okay.
we won't unless there's something to add to the conversation, we think.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of videos we probably could have done that we just didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just kind of how we maintain our brand or our voice or however you want to put it. And yeah, you just got to do that. You got to find your own voice and make your way through it. Because even I'll be honest with you, look, we all start in a place where you're going to find yourself where there's probably more people on screen than there are in the chat. We all start there. Even when I became Midnight's Edge After Dark, the boost I got from that still didn't save us at first from broadcasting to only a handful of people. Like I said, it's at one point we just like everybody else, we had more people on screen than we did in the chat. And before you know it, though, as long as you're consistent, more people show up.
Yeah.
And Midnight's Edge After Dark doesn't have a shit ton of subscribers, pardon my French, but we are pretty consistent because we've been pretty much, since we were one of the first ones to do the live streams quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that was why I was brought down. One of the reasons why I was brought on to begin with was to kind of facilitate that kind of stuff, because that's kind of in my background. And, so, I'm proud of what we've pulled off there. And the morning show has been a success. So, I mean, with Toxic Femininity, I mean, I don't even want to pat myself on the back for that so much either, but hey, it is what it is. I've basically, I produce, 3 to 4 successful shows a week, and I have a couple other shows that are in the cooker right now that are kind of starting. But hey, 4K for You is doing very well, and a few of the other things we do are doing well. So I mean, I'm proud of what we do, and as long as you're happy with what you're doing, that's all that matters. And to try and get away from a lot of the negativity and some of the other stuff that some people try to claim that we push. That's why I created shows like 4K for You. That's why I created shows like A-rated B movies and B-rated A movies, so we can just talk about things that we love. And sure, that show may not be one that everybody watches, but that's there for when, people try to say that all we do is this and all we do is that. And I say, prove it, because we don't do the clickbait material. We don't do the incessant hate videos constantly.
Exactly.
You'll be hard pressed to find a bunch of, Brie Larson videos on Midnight's Edge.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing, doing this and doing the other channel that I have that's more of a group effort. That, I always say, listen, this is our opinion. I'm not telling you that this is what you should believe. I appreciate everybody's opinion. Just come to me with the opinion that you're not fighting me on what I'm saying. You have something to back up what you're saying or why you believe what you're saying. And it seems like a lot of times now that there are people who don't have that. They come at you with something and they're like, oh, this is really what's going on. Or you're like this, you're a horrible person because of this and this. And it's like, there's no founding behind what they say. There's a lot of that going on, and that drives me nuts.
Well, yeah, that's what kind of tore apart fandoms in general.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right. Speaking of fandoms, because I know you like to direct, or that you would love to direct and stuff. Okay, so give me 3 things, just 3 quick things off the top of your head, which I could come up with a billion, but whatever, I'm sure you could too. Give me 3 things that would do the Disney sequel trilogy, that you would do to the sequel trilogy that might make it better. 3 things.
Wow. Well, what's my stipulations? I mean, do I get to start from scratch or do I have to
Sure,
work?
if that's number one, start from scratch. Say it. I wouldn't disagree with you.
Yeah, I'd start over. And then, yeah, I just basically, my second thing would do something very similar to Afterlife, where you're setting up these new characters, but also paying a homage to the past, and uh, and then passing the torch on in the next two films, and finishing off one loop of stories while opening up a whole world of new stories. And I would probably not have Ray be related to anybody. Uh,
Hmm.
that part in the respect.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't disagree with that.
yeah, I mean, I don't hate the overall story they're going for in the sequel trilogy. It's just done poorly, and there
Oh
could have
yeah.
been some great echoing done from the prequels. Because like you could have, people hated that Kylo Ren killed Han Solo. I hated it too, but and then
Oh god.
he almost killed his mom as well. Well, you could have had a storyline where, yeah, basically, I'll try and keep it as short as I can, but like
No, you're fine.
basically, like, you have, okay, the son of Han Solo and uh Princess Leia, and he's being trained by Luke in the background, but she's all sucked into creating a new republic, and Luke is trying to rebuild the Jedi.
Mhm.
And then you have like remnants of the Empire in the background building, and they're creating and infiltrating, and creating a lot of problems within the New Republic, and making the people not trust the New Republic and be like, well, so much better when we had the Empire. We may have
Mhm.
had control, but at least we had food and we had jobs and we had that kind of
Mhm.
thing, like setting up discontent among the people. And then in the background, you also have Snoke or some character like that kind of feeding into Kylo, kind of turning him against his folks. And then, like I said, you could still have him kill both of his parents, and that'd be the ultimate sin, right? Because
Mhm.
that's like the opposite of what Luke did. Luke's whole thing was to save his father. Well, Kylo destroys
Mhm.
his family, and you could even had a moment that went and called back to the prequel trilogy, where you have Kylo there crying on the bank of Octu, or whatever the hell it's called,
Mhm.
looking up at Luke, reaching up to him, kind of like Anakin was to Obi-Wan, saying, I've failed you, Uncle, help me. I killed my parents. What have I done? Stop
Mhm.
me from going to the dark side. And it's this whole journey of him trying not to go to the dark side, while you also have this other young girl, Rey, who at first we think is going to be a hero, and then we turn out she's actually the villain the whole time. She turns, and she's the one who's actually the real bad guy, and she takes over and builds up this new empire from all the discontent that's in surrounding the legacy that Princess Leia tried to build and failed to build, and the failed legacy of the Jedi that Luke was trying to build, and now he has to rebuild with his nephew and all that kind of stuff. You could have still worked with a lot of the stuff that's
Yeah.
there,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
but they did it very poorly.
I thought they were gonna go for the whole twins, that Han and Leia had in the books. I thought
Well,
they
and
were gonna
even
go
if
for
you have
that
that, like,
run.
even if you have them brother and sister, that would have
Mhm.
made sense too. You could have done that, but still have her go bad, or be about,
Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
no. Go ahead.
well, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Ben having to pull her back at the end of part 3, then echoing Return of the Jedi, like him coming full
Yeah.
circle,
No,
and that being his
absolutely.
redemption arc or whatever.
Yeah. I know a
Although it
lot of
wouldn't really
people.
fully redeem him for killing his parents, but yeah.
No, yeah, exactly. No. Well, it's that whole consequence. You can't change what you've done, but maybe you can change what you will become or be.
Because I
Um,
didn't hate the whole idea of the grandson being obsessed with the grandfather, because anybody who has a
mm-hmm.
kid, especially a son, who tell you his best buddy is his grandpa.
Oh
That
yeah.
man who
No.
used to dread, who used to hate, who used to
Yep.
sit there and wish hateful crap on when he would spank you, be like, I hope he gets hit by a truck and die. That kind of
Your
shit. That's
kids
the man
adore
that is
that
your
person.
kid's best friend now.
Yes, absolutely. And it is an evil, like, it's an evil, like, partnership they have,
It
because
is. It is.
the grandparents are doing things with the kids that make them come back to you, and you're like, oh my god, you're killing me here.
So
Stop
I can
that.
totally see this obsession, especially if you have Han. I hate him being an absentee father, but let's, like I said, it even was set up there where, okay, why did Han and Leia break up? Well, if she wanted Luke to train Ben, and Ben, Luke says, well, I don't know. I sense something in him that I just something don't feel right. And Han's like, well, if Luke says he shouldn't be trained, then he shouldn't be trained. And Leia's like, no, I want it to be that way. And he's like, well, then I'm out of here. If you're going to send our kid off, that's some, convent, kind of thing. So like, yeah, just having him be the way he was just kind of like, I don't know.
For sure.
Again, there's too many issues, too many problems. I couldn't just fix it with 3 things outside of unless I just kind of get to start from scratch. But
I would not. Okay, so I'm with you. I'd start over, but I would have done whatever I could have to at least have Lucas there, kind of overseeing stuff. I wouldn't force him to be there every day.
Mistake, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They overcompensated. They misunderstood what people were trying to say with the prequel discontent. And I don't call it hate, because a lot of us fans, even though we weren't happy with them, doesn't mean we hate them. Right? It's just we have certain issues with them, and we know what the core of the problem was, and that was that George, who is this guy who's just full of all kinds of ideas and characters and places and all these things, just isn't the best at giving you a straightforward person story.
Writing that story is the hard part for him.
And to make a movie, it's a group of people. And when you have somebody who everybody around him is going, yes, yes, yes. And then, like I said, just watch the beginning. That documentary tells you everything you need to know about what went wrong with the prequels. And in some cases, what went right. Part of what was right is, George had complete creative control. But what he didn't have was somebody there who he trusted to tell him, maybe you're going too far with this, George. Maybe you should try something different. And I don't know if we could put that blame then on Ben Burt or Rick McCullum, who was the producer, or some of these other guys who probably should have reined him in a little bit. But again, that's not even all George's fault. So you can't even dump all that on him, because he was just being pushed to make these movies for so long. And he's like, finally, I'm going to make these movies. And I get it where he's coming from. He's like, all everybody did was bitch about him. And then I turn around to sell him to Disney, and that's kind of the way it ended, And no, you're right. The first thing they should have done is used his treatments, but allowed other people to work with that.
Well, the thing I say about the prequels, the biggest thing I always go back to is 2 things. One, he, in the original trilogy, said he didn't want there to be any context. He wanted you to go with it or not. And he put context into the prequels, like way too much, I think. Second thing was, one of the best things he did for the original trilogy was he knew that Irvin Kershner was the guy that he needed for The Empire Strikes Back. He didn't use that same mentality or that same sense during the prequels. He should have thought that out. I mean, I don't hate. I'm like you. I don't hate the prequels. I just know that there's a lot of things that were there that it's like, oh, you could have done this or this. Really quick here, let's go with this question really quick. Midnight's Edge After Dark. Tom, is Star Trek dead? Is there sliver of any chance of saving it, or have they burned your bridges and divided the fandom?
I think it has more of a chance than Star Wars. Star Wars is luckily big enough that it's kind of one of those too big to fail things. Like, they'll have to really milk that like a sea cow for quite some time to lose all the fans there. But Star Trek is a bit more of a fickle date. The fans of Star Trek are not as forgiving. They will not, because, they also don't have the luxury that the Star Wars fans do, despite the EU being erased. Things are still technically supposed to be in the same continuity. You have a convolution of continuity when it comes to Star Trek. But in that lies a kernel of hope. And in that kernel of hope is a lot of this stuff can be completely disregarded once a new regime moves in and hopefully takes Star Trek back to formula. And at that point, then maybe, just maybe, you can get a lot of the classic fans back. But it's an uphill battle. I think Star Trek would have a less of a battle, though, than Star Wars would, as long as they get the right people involved.
Okay, yeah. It's a mess, but
Captain Trek thinks the opposite of me, and I'd be interested sometime to hear why he thinks the opposite. But I think Star Wars is too far gone. You've already destroyed the original characters. Outside of Picard, Star Trek, you can disavow the 09 movies, and you can disavow Discovery and Lower Decks and all that stuff.
One thing that Roddenberry did originally when he added the element of time travel and things is that he allowed the ability to say, this is a completely different timeline. It does not exist to us. And I think that in a sense, as easy as it is, that is probably the saving grace for something like Star Trek, is that you can kind of look back on a lot of that and say, okay, I don't count that because of this and that, and
easily, yeah.
Yeah, and so that is kind of the built-in thing. Star Wars is very heavily rooted in that original trilogy.
Exactly.
Prequels didn't kill that.
And Favreau has said that he's contractually obligated to have to stick within their canon, no matter how much we want him to undo it.
But what I have said about Favreau and Filoni is that I believe that they're doing everything they can to kind of restore some of that within the confines of what they have to do. I think they're trying. It's just they can't.
Filoni, I can't speak so much to. Favreau, I think his heart's in the right place. Yes.
Okay. Well, you see, and the thing is I can tell people, people who say, well, maybe they'll just get rid of the sequel trilogy. I said, Disney never admits they're wrong. They have an iron curtain in front of them, and the mouse sits out front, and whatever the mouse says, that's it. There could be a nuclear war going on behind that curtain, and they will not let you know that.
This is something I was told by somebody, and this is kind of how I know a few things, or at least the same person that told me that Kathy has a stipulation in her contract where as long as the prequel trilogy made $1 billion each, she has the first right to refusal. And that's what I was told. The same person also told me that, and this is supported by what Jon Favreau said, is that there was a stipulation in the clause with George Lucas that anything that he does with the special editions is canon. Anything in the prequels is canon. Anything in the movies is canon. Anything in live action is canon, or animation is supposed to be canon. So that's why they couldn't erase any of that kind of stuff. The stuff that he had chose as that, canon. Now he did not include the EU books, unfortunately, but he had assumed that they would just use that stuff. Because like he said, time and time again, we have it. It's here. It's already written. It's there. He even said that in an interview. It was there. I don't know why they just didn't use it. It was there. It was already written. And that's where but see, there's the thing is he made that the stipulation. So then Disney is using that as the stipulation that anything is in the movies is canon now. So Favreau has to adhere to what's in the sequel, unfortunately. Sequel trilogy, I mean.
Indeed. Okay, so what we're going to do now is a final 5. I'm going to ask you 5 questions, 5 quick answers, and that's it. Your grilling is over. You can go and you can take a cold shower from the sweat that you're pouring out.
It's been fun, man. Actually, I had the night open up, so outside of some
That's
BS.
awesome. I am very happy to have you here. We haven't talked in a long while, actually, but I'm glad. I know you're busy. I know I get busy, but it's great to have you on. So let's do a final 5. First question. What is the best of the 3 Ghostbusters movies?
Ghostbusters 1.
Okay. All right. I mean, I loved Afterlife. My worry about Afterlife was that that people might not accept it because they thought it was too fan service and too nostalgic.
There was a few people, but overall, I think a lot of people that most people that saw it, I've seen the reaction to it has been pretty positive.
Exactly. Oh, no, that's for sure. I was just worried that people were going to rip it apart for me. Oh, they just did this and this. But I think they did a great job of introducing new characters and keeping the old feel, the stuff that we knew as original fans of Ghostbusters.
Well, it boils down if you like the actress playing Phoebe, right? Because she's carrying this movie. And shows that we don't have a problem with you introducing women into this franchise. It's how.
Exactly.
And it's how she treats, the legacy of the characters is the most important part, even in spite of her mother in the movie, which the mother actually has a legitimate reason for being like, that's the thing. All you do is have to give us reasons, set up the characters, and we'll get invested. Like you fall in love with podcasts quickly. Sure, at first you're like, oh, he's just a Ray clone. But real quick, you're just like, God damn it, if I don't like that kid.
Exactly.
And all the other ancillary characters are not obnoxious. Paul Rudd was an ingenious addition to the cast. He fits in perfectly. I can't wait to hopefully see him. Yeah. Why? What do you have to do with that?
He's from Kansas City.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, what are you?
You're welcome. I'm from Kansas City. We gave him to you. It's us. It's us that did this. I'm just kidding.
No, but I can't wait to see him suit up with the other guys. God, that'd be awesome. Yes. So I hope
they open that up for so much.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All
Huge universe of possibilities.
Oh yes, absolutely. I'm just excited that it didn't blow up. I was just so glad. I watched it. I was like, okay, I can live with this. This is great. This is good. Because I was just so worried that it could be that sense of failure, and it didn't happen. I was so happy about that. What is one cartoon that you watched and loved as a child, but looking back at it now, you realize how crappy it really was?
Um, None really. I will say that hmm, probably after, if you take your nostalgia glasses off, I hate to say this, but yeah, the second season on through probably like season whatever of Ninja Turtles before they got dark again in the original
Yeah,
series
damn it! I knew you were going to go there.
doesn't hold up nearly as well. I mean, it's
Damn it!
some wacky shit, but
No,
that's
you're right. You're
you know,
absolutely
they
right.
clearly geared it more like you can tell the turn from where they were gearing it towards the older kids to we're going to dial this down to the really little kids, and then it kind of got its footing back a little later on after the movie and stuff like that. But I mean, just not the whole series overall, not the
No.
whole series overall, but just there's that patch of we're gonna make and real Ghostbusters suffers from the same problem, to be honest with you, in the last part.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's probably worse, to be honest. I'll take that back. I'll revert that and give it to the Slimer and the real Ghostbusters
Okay.
fiasco. That to me is worse. That's probably a worse change because I mean, most of the cartoons I watched growing up, I have revisited, and most of them pretty much hold up, especially from the point of view of, hey, it's a freaking Saturday morning cartoon.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, I was, when you say real Ghostbusters, I can get with you on that. But the reason why I asked that question is I thought you might say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
well,
You
and
and
that's
I
the
both
thing.
have a lot of that nostalgia towards that, especially.
They're both here's the
Mister.
problem. They're both a great series. Like especially the real Ghostbusters holds up very, very, very well. Those first few seasons. Once they get into when they change shit at ABC on Ghostbusters, that's when it went downhill. So like season 4, 5, somewhere in there, wherever. Ninja Turtles, unfortunately, it happened right at season 2. Like it starts
Mm-hmm.
right off the bat. The moment they go from Playmates having control to just Fred Wolf having control, where he had no influence from Playmates really, that's when he started aiming it a little bit more towards the younger audience, and kind of took a bit of the edge off, and they didn't get that back to later. So that to me, it's kind of a similar problem, but on both ends of the spectrum. Because Ghostbusters, it didn't happen till the end. Ninja Turtles, it happened early on, but then it got better. So
Yeah.
kind of take it both ways. But pretty much anything I liked as a kid, most of it holds. I mean, there's some embarrassing shit, like the Little Shop cartoon I watched, and I caught like a few seconds of that once. I'm like, oh my god, was that bad? So yeah, there's that. I'm sure.
No. But yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of the same stuff I like. I know you like He-Man.
Oh yeah, He-Man holds up
Have you
very
ever had
well.
John Silvestri on?
No, but I know who he is, and I
Yeah.
missed an opportunity to talk to him once. But yeah,
Well, I mean, I talked to him quite a bit. I can send him your way if you ever want him on. Just let me know.
well, I'm
But
sure
no,
anything He-Man we love. But no, like
dude.
yeah, He-Man holds up real well.
Mhm.
She-Ra actually holds up a lot better than it should.
Yeah. Okay. So again, a lot of this stuff is based around the fact I know you and I have a lot of similar. I don't want to say exact likes, but similar
Similar taste.
things we like. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what's the best old pizza shop or hamburger joint? Because you remember that place that was down off the corner that wasn't McDonald's, wasn't Pizza Hut. It was that one where everybody smoked and all that. What was the best old pizza shop or hamburger joint video game, in your opinion? Because remember that? Remember that video game? You go in.
Okay.
Yeah, the video game that sat right here. Here's the counter, and right behind you was always the video game you wanted to go play. You're pulling your dad. Give me a quarter. Give me a quarter.
That was Galaga, the sit-down version of Galaga at this one supper club. I'm trying to think. It's like Club Chaparral or something like that. It was called. Yeah, that sit-down Galaga game, man. Holy crap! Like, and then what was even awesomer is when I got my video store, I had the guys bring in some video games. I'm like, do you have, please and thank you, a sit-down Galaga game? And I'll be damned if they didn't bring me one. And I I sung so
Dude,
many
I remember
quarters into that bitch. Oh man, I love that. That one was probably my big one. Other than that was always, of course, Showbiz Pizza and the Ninja
Mhm.
Turtles and Simpsons games were
Yeah,
the
yeah.
yeah.
We had a place called Norm's. It was like a pizza slash hamburger. It just had everything. It was just that. What
Yeah,
is
this
it?
was like a
Better Off
supper
Dead.
club buffet place. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Better Off Dead, that hamburger joint there, that's what Norm's was kind of like. It's just that I don't know. It's just, you don't have that anymore. But they would have they had Galaga, they had Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man. They changed out every once in a while. But I remember really when what was it, out or not Cruising USA, but it was like Outrun. Was that what it was beforehand or something like that? I don't remember. They had
Not
some
my side
racing
of the
game.
US. Yeah.
I don't remember, but
I remember Racing USA and all those, but I don't remember.
that might have been Racing USA. I don't know. Anyways, they had so much stuff there. I mean, I admit it's like you don't get that anymore. You just don't.
That was one of the first ones, Racing USA, that I remember having all like the shaking and all that kind of stuff.
And you could do extra things with the pedals. It wasn't just push down or all of that stuff. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. You're gonna kill me maybe for this one, but Beatles or Rolling Stones and why?
Oh, this is easy. I love the Rolling Stones. Don't get me wrong. Longevity, great top 40 hits, grungy hits, great library. But I'm a Beatles guy. What can I say?
Same here.
I mean, it's the Beatles.
I'm sorry.
I've always described
it as I've always described it as the Rolling Stones were both the Who, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles. They all kind of looked the same, and they were trying to go for the same thing up front. But then the Rolling Stones kept that blues rock thing, and they really just stuck really heavily with that blues rock thing. The Beatles just, in a very short amount of time, went from that blues rock to this Indian, expansive sound. They followed the Beach Boys with
Pet Shop
all
sound,
of that stuff. Yeah, it's just like they literally in about 5-6 years just went through so many changes, and when they did it, they were really good at it too. So,
the Rolling Stones really embraced that bar band vibe, and they kept it going, and they're keeping it going, and good for them. And I love that. Like musically, like the Beatles were just insane, and then in between that, you had Fleetwood Mac and then Pink Floyd. They all just kind of melded into each other as far as like how they just pushed music along into the modern age.
Yeah. Last question. In your opinion, what is the best movie of all time?
It's usually depends on the day you ask me.
That's fine. Today.
It used to be The Empire Strikes Back, but I sadly I've lost a lot of love with Star Wars. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still think Empire Strikes Back's a 10 out of 10 movie. It's a great film. But I find myself watching other movies more often than I do that anymore. So usually if you ask me, on one day it'll be Ninja Turtles 1990 film, and another day it'll be Jaws. But I usually go with Jaws. So yeah.
Jaws. Okay, so my thought process on Jaws is this, and I can totally get down with Jaws, is because I tell people, you don't realize what Jaws did. Jaws was a monumental failure, I think, behind the scenes, because so many things went wrong. But because of that, Spielberg worked around things like Bruce not working, and the whole story behind the barrels being dragged. That they wanted to show the shark, but they couldn't because it wasn't working on that day. So they figured out another way to make it. All the things that went wrong made him have to come up with other ways to tell that story, and the way he did it was perfect. It just works out beautifully. But Jaws is why you have Star Wars and Indiana Jones, which is probably two of the biggest film franchises ever. And if Jaws had been a monumental failure, and if Steven Spielberg hadn't made that work, I don't think we would have ever gotten the other two.
You're probably right, and I've also posited that Spielberg's career wouldn't have went the way it did either.
Exactly. Well, I mean, you've heard the story that Spielberg literally was the guy that kind of gave his say, yeah, Lucas can do this. Lucas is a great guy because they went to school together. He kind of gave his little rubber stamp after getting Jaws. Let's figure out where Tom went. Oh, okay. It froze on him, and I wasn't sure if it was on my end or there. No, I'll basically say what I had to say. There he is. Okay, here we go. Yeah.
Hello.
StreamYard did something stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I didn't lose that. I was like, what the hell? I got kicked out.
Yeah, no, and I don't know what happened. Anyways, I was going to say that I think that if it had gone wrong, because Spielberg pulled George Lucas aside after the first showing when it had all the extra stuff that his wife took out and rearranged and all that, which I think you might have been the one that told me to watch Star Wars Saved in the Edit, which I think is a great piece to watch. I think Spielberg, he even said, I pulled him aside and I said to Lucas, I said, this is not the movie you're going to release, is it? Spielberg was worried about the way that Star Wars was looking at that moment. And I think that he was worried.
He was one of the only guys who kind of got it, yeah.
Yeah. But
because everybody else just kind of looked at him like, what is this, George? Like, what are you trying to do here? Like,
for sure.
You got a talking dog, and you got some asthmatic bad guy, and laser swords.
Like I said, I totally can get down with the Jaws, though. Totally. All right. Well, it's just past an hour. I tried to do this for about an hour, so I want to thank you, Mr. Tom of Midnight's Edge After Dark, M.E.A.D Radio, all that fun stuff. There's one thing I need to do right now, and that is share my screen, because I do this to find the next person who's going to come on. This is called the Wheel of Names. Of course, sometimes I have to schedule these things like with Tom and stuff. But we're going to see who we get this time. Flipped out. Fandom Collective. We're going to talk to him and make sure he has some time coming up soon. I will remove his name since he's been spun. But that's how you got picked, Tom. There you go.
Okay, that makes sense.
You've seen the magic.
I'd say because my agent and my manager didn't tell me schnit.
I know. No, I do that because I don't believe in bringing people on just because of how many subscribers you have. I think when I have people on,
you said something to me. I'm like, did I forget something?
No. I forget a lot of things.
I do too.
But, okay.
Yeah.
But I want you to tell everybody one more time about yourself, really quick. Just your channel and all that. M.E.A.D Radio. Tell everybody about that really quick. And then,
you can find me at Midnight's Edge After Dark. I just want to thank, Andre and Mikey, Mexican Iron Man, and Six for all the stuff they do for me behind the scenes, and Andre, of course, in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. Other than that, thank you for having me. It's been fun. It's always fun talking to you.
Dude, like I said, it's been way too long, and I know that's not on your side or my side. That's what happens. But I'm glad that we were able to do this. It's awesome to have you on. Everybody in the chat, thank you so very much. You guys were a great group of people, so had some good questions and stuff like that. So with that said, guys, I am Chris Knight. This is The Real Review 3000. If you don't know what I'm about, ADHD for YouTube is what I say. Check out the channel. If you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much, Tom. You have a good night. Bye, everyone.
Please remember to like, subscribe, And never forget to ring that bell.
Now I want Taco Bell.
Follow Chris Knight and The Real Review 3000 on these platforms. For email and Patreon, see the description box below. To reach The Ego, use the Twitter handle @TheEgo5150.
We would like to thank the generous members of The Real Review 3000. Those members are JJ, aka Sithlord 3827, Anzo of Biggerford Entertainment, Yvette, Sean Stackhouse, Captain Trek, Jesse Ritchie, and Abraham Morales. Thank you for your support and donations that help us at The Real Review 3000 bring you, the viewer, better content. For information on how to become a member, click the join button below.